Coming up on Tech News today, Megaupload gets thrown in irons. Has Apple eliminated the need for schools? And why Xbox is better than Windows? All that and more coming up.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by Cachefly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Tech News Today for Thursday, January 19th, 2012. Tech News Today is brought to you by GoToMeeting. Collaborate face-to-face remotely with GoToMeeting with HD Faces. For your free 30-day trial, visit GoToMeeting.com, promo code TNT. Welcome to Tech News Today. I'm Tom Merritt.
I'm Sarah Lane.
I'm Iyaz, Akhtar.
And I'm Jason Howell.
And this is the show where we kick around the tech news of the day, try to make some sense. We got some big old tech news.
No kidding.
To kick around today. We're going to get to the new Facebook Open Graph. We're going to get to the new Apple announcement on textbooks. But let's start with the FBI charging into New Zealand and arresting 4 and charging 7 members of Megaupload. This is crazy. Who needs SOPA and PIPA? Apparently, FBI can just go across the ocean and arrest whoever they want. They arrested Kim.com, also a.k.a. Kim Schmitz, who is the leader, a founder, co-founder of Megaupload. One report said they arrested Kim Tim Jim Vestor, who is another of the circle of leaders there. Another report said founder Matthias Ortman, Finn Batau, and developer Bram Vanderkolk were the other 3 arrested. But there is also a report that the house of Kim.com is surrounded by police right now. So,
well, the servers for Megaupload were located in the United States, so that, I guess, around the SOPA argument there, these servers were there, even though this is a .com name. And the crimes are, what, online piracy, racketeering conspiracy. They've been called the Mega Conspiracy in some press releases.
Mega Conspiracy.
Conspiring to commit copyright infringement and conspiring to commit money laundering.
Yeah, they're charged in the Eastern District of Virginia because of that
Right.
server that you're talking about. New Zealand police, quote, executed provisional arrest warrants requested by the United States. And the FBI worked not only with New Zealand, but Hong Kong, because some of these citizens of New Zealand are dual citizens in Hong Kong. They worked with the Netherlands, Canada, Germany, the UK, and the Philippines, as well as ICE, Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, on the case. One thing that was uncovered here that I didn't realize, Swizz Beatz, husband to Alicia Keys, is apparently not only a producer in residence at NYU, but the CEO of Megaupload. And so that explains why they got Kim Kardashian and P. Diddy and all of those folks to show up and do the video.
Wait, so he was a secret CEO of sorts?
Well,
Because
I don't
I've
know
never heard of this.
I don't know how secret it is, but yeah, I had not heard of it
Well, it's not secret
either.
anymore, clearly,
Right.
but this would be something I would have thought we would have heard about.
Yeah, I would have, when all of that wondering of how they got the stars to do the video came out.
Yeah.
Back in December.
Really big deal producer running the company would make sense to me.
Yeah,
But I've never heard of
it all
this.
makes sense in retrospect.
And his
anyway.
publicist for Swizz Beatz actually confirmed this is true. So this is something that's been sitting around. Nobody seemed to notice. It explains so much, though.
Isn't that strange, though, that this guy, assuming that all this is true, would be someone who'd be working closely with record labels and people who are trying to protect their copyright as much as possible, running Megaupload?
Well, now, Megaupload contends that they are not violating the law, that they're like YouTube. They're a safe harbor. The way Megaupload works, you upload your own files, and then you can share them with other people. You can share direct links. You can password protect them. It's like Rapid Share. It's like, in fact, in some ways, it's kind of like Dropbox. But what they're accused of is encouraging people to use the service for copyright infringement. And so that's what's going to have to be determined in court. But obviously, they were able to convince a judge to issue an arrest warrant. So they've got some evidence.
And of course, Anonymous is upset about this. They've went ahead and taken down a bunch of sites, either DDoS, and they're not explaining exactly how, but that's usually how they operate. They've taken down MPAA.org, Justice.gov, UniversalMusic.com, RAAA.org, and I don't know if they're going to continue doing this, but
Working fast.
if you take a look
And
at
it
Twitter,
really wasn't even that hard.
it's on their official, non-ops Twitter account. So looks like they are ticked off. So if you were tired or you missed the Anonymous news, they're going to be in the news for a while.
All right, let's move on to the Apple announcement that took place this morning in New York City about textbooks. Sarah, you've been covering this on iPad Today.
Yeah, so there were three major announcements that came out of the education-based event in New York. One is an updated iBooks app. So iBooks is something that's it's part of iOS as long as you're updated to the newest release. It's called iBooks 2 or iBooks Textbooks. This is a way for you to use iBooks to store your textbooks as well as any other book that you might buy through Apple's bookstore. iBooks Author, which is actually an app for OS X, so it's a Mac app only, at least at this time, that allows you to basically author your own textbook. And Leo and I actually bounced around. What would be some of the other uses for something like this? I mean, you can make it about anything you want. Obviously, the highlights are not only text, but video and interactive elements, that sort of thing. Easy publishing, of course, into Apple's store. And then finally, an updated iTunes U. So this is an app. Previously, iTunes U was a part of iTunes that you could access pretty easily the way that you could access podcasts or music. This is actually a standalone app now that's available in the App Store completely for free, which is a variety of textbooks that don't cost you anything. And it remains to be seen how pricing is going to go forward. It also isn't exactly public how much of a cut Apple is taking from the textbooks that they will be selling in iBooks textbook arena. We think probably 30% unless we hear differently. But joining us to maybe shed a little bit more light from the educational side is Kathleen Fitzpatrick, who's the Director of Scholarly Communication of the Modern Language Association. Hello, Kathleen.
Hi.
So what do you make of this announcement? Are teachers excited about this? Are they scared? What's the general sense?
I get the sense that teachers are enthusiastic and excited about this. I mean, I think there's a lot to be excited about. Having a form of textbook that students can really operate in a hands-on fashion, something that can be more interactive, that works in the ways that students work today, I think is really a good thing. On top of which, the texts that are being made available in the iBooks store right now, the ones that are already there, are priced at $14.99 and under. And if you know anything about the textbook market, you know that that's really, really inexpensive in comparison with what textbooks traditionally cost. So there is a lot to be enthusiastic about here, but there are some causes for concern as well, and some questions that I think need to be asked about, you know, what this model is going to do for education, for publishing in general. As we move forward.
Now, you mentioned the $14.99 or under textbook price in iBooks. That sounds really good. I know that the three big publishers, Pearson, McGraw-Hill, and Houghton Mifflin Harcourt, are all on board. So it sounds good already. Now, I know that the way that these publishers have worked with educational institutions and thus far is they sell bulks of books to a school district, and the shelf life is it's like a 5-year cycle type of a thing. So
right.
The books are more expensive, but they can be recycled. Now, obviously, if you buy a book app, it can't be shared with anybody. It's, you know, if I buy it, it only belongs to me. I can't share it with Tom or you. But the idea is that as every kid enters the class, they'll also be buying those apps. So you end up almost as a wash, where, you know, a $100 book is only $15, but you're selling so many more of them. Is that right?
I think that is the sense. I think the sense that every student is going to need to have their own copy, that the funding for these textbooks can come from school districts or it can come from students, but every copy is going to need to be purchased, allows for that lower price point. One thing to note, it's gotten a little bit of play around today that $14.99 price point was a ceiling, that everything in the textbook store would be under $14.99. And that's not the case. In fact, we did get confirmation today that the price point is whatever publishers want to set it at. It just happens that the price point for the things that are there right now is under $15.
So the question I know, I'm sure a lot of parents and teachers are asking themselves is, how is my student going to get an iPad? For many people, iPads are still very expensive. And the idea that everyone has their own iPad sounds really good, but our entire school district's going to sort of be left out in the cold if this is the way that education is going forward sort of immediately?
Well, this is a real question, I think, particularly for a number of students who may have a laptop but not have an iPad, that, they're able to have one device but not both. There's going to be some concern about the ability to get the devices into the hands of students. And I think this is reflected in some of the concern that you've seen today about the fact that the texts that are produced through the iBooks Author program and that are being distributed through the iBooks store are only readable on the iPad, that they don't have other platforms that they're compatible with at the moment. This remains to be seen whether that environment opens up, but I think it's going to be a grave concern until it does.
Also, on the side of instructors, teachers, professors putting together their own textbooks, the EULA on iBooks Author, if you read it, does limit distribution options if the books are charged for. It says if your work is provided for a fee, you may only distribute the work through Apple, and such distribution is subject to the following limitations and conditions. You need to enter a separate written agreement with Apple. Not a huge surprise that Apple wants to limit distribution to within their own ecosystem, but as a teacher, how much of it, is there enough of an incentive to go through the trouble to put together a textbook, which is going to be a bit of work, if you can't distribute it outside of Apple's ecosystem?
I think this is a real question to be asked, and how much Apple's restrictions around distribution, and particularly around distribution that produces revenue, are going to end up limiting the kinds of business that they're able to do. I mean, there were some questions that were being asked early in the day today about whether the format itself of these books was going to be a closed proprietary format. It turns out that it is an EPUB related format. It's very, very close to EPUB with a changed MIME type. So the format is a bit more open than it at first appeared, but that the ecosystem through which these things are being sold and distributed and produced and consumed is so closed is of grave concern, I think.
All right. Well, it's interesting to hear the perspective from people who are actually going to be using these tools, maybe more than us, who say, well, education, that's great. Interactive textbooks, digital, looks good.
I found it pretty easy to throw one together. Now, I don't actually have a textbook, so I was taking something that was improperly formatted and trying to make it fit. But even just kind of half paying attention to try it out, it was super simple. But I know, Kathleen, one of the things you had noted in your post was there's not enough ways to share. There's not enough ways you can build in all this interactivity into the book, but it's like building a CD-ROM. There's not any way to pull someone in to, put a Twitter feed or have sharing between the people that are reading.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I had these flashbacks through the presentation of being back in the CD-ROM days and seeing this sort of closed environment in which I can make annotations, but the annotations are only from me. It's not conversational. The interaction that's inspired by these books is only interaction between the student and the text, not between the student and the author, not between students. So I think that there's not a sense yet of the ways that the social is changing the mediation of textbooks and of publishing. I mean, this is something that I've been thinking about for a while, and I'm hoping that this is only a first step, that we'll start seeing platforms that will allow for textbook authoring in ways that opens up a conversation among students within a text.
One of the reports I read, though, I believe the authors can actually put an HTML5 code or JavaScript. So maybe from there you could build in the social elements.
That's true. You could roll somehow, your own, maybe. Right. If Apple approves.
It would be nice if it was a built-in tool, but I'm thinking, again, I'm thinking if I wanted the social element, I'd probably try to use HTML5 to my advantage in that particular case.
This also, my question is, how many instructors are equipped to do things like that? HTML5, it's like all of a sudden you've got teachers going, I don't know, I'm not going to do this.
Yeah.
I want to stick with that book where I don't have to worry about it. I just have my knowledge. That's
why you have all the major publishers, 90% of the textbook publishers on board for this, I would imagine. Kathleen, thank you so much for joining us. Any last thoughts before we let you go?
No, I just really curious to see where this goes. I think that the platform is really interesting for textbook development, but as we saw, the focus today was on K-12 education primarily, and I think there are a lot more potential uses in higher education, in scholarly publishing, in general interest publications. But I'm curious to see how this restrictive EULA really affects adoption and authors' willingness to get into the Apple environment.
Well, thanks again for joining us. And I know you've got some stuff online as well as a book that deals with exactly this sort of thing. Let folks know where they can find you and find your book.
Absolutely. Well, the book is entitled Planned Obsolescence, Publishing Technology and the Future of the Academy. It's available, as you can see here, on Amazon. It's out from NYU Press, just came out in November, and is thinking about these kinds of questions with respect to scholarly communication, how it's changing in the networked environment. And I can be found at plannedobsolescence.net and in the Office of Scholarly Communication at the Modern Language Association.
Thanks again. Kathleen Fitzpatrick,
Thank
Director
you.
of Scholarly Communication, Modern Language Association. Let's move on to something that we thought probably was going to be the top story, or at least competing with Apple for the top story until Megaupload
things
exploded. Facebook yesterday evening announced 60 new apps for frictionless sharing in their open graph. Apps like Ticketmaster, Foodly, Pinterest now join the verbs of listen, look, watch in the open graph.
So, okay, we've talked about this this open graph announcement that happened at Facebook headquarters. We knew it was coming, and the idea that the like button isn't enough now. If you're going to go to a concert or if you're eating something that you really like, it's like the verbs have to get more interesting. That's all fine. But this is not anything new. Facebook has already been experimenting with the open graph with a select number of apps. This is all stuff that in your settings you can either toggle on or off. You can choose to share publicly what you're listening to on Spotify, for example, or I can choose just to share with friends or friends of friends, general Facebook stuff. Now, what's going to happen is it's going to be a flood of if I make an update to my Pinterest page, I can share that with Tom if I choose to. Now, Tom, of course, can choose, actually, on the Facebook news ticker on the right-hand side, which is where all these updates will come in, you really don't have the option to filter that out unless you actually block the application.
Unless I filter you or
yeah. So,
no,
so it's a two-way filtering system.
I think what's most interesting about this is that with different types of apps being added in, there's different types of things that you can do. For instance, Ticketmaster. I saw a couple people in the chat room go, Ticketmaster? Why would I want everyone to know I bought tickets to see Hanson's reunion? I didn't. Ticketmaster will automatically detect, with your permission, what music you're listening to, say, on Spotify. And then if they are touring in your area, which it knows based on your profile, they'll give you the option to buy tickets to that. Now that, I think, that's cool. That's something I would like.
That does come in handy. So it's not just to let other people know what you're doing. It helps you, I don't know, be a better consumer. Also something like Foodly, which is a cooking app. If I was to say, I'm making this recipe right now and Iyaz is interested in that, then he can hop on and make a similar recipe. And also, the whole idea with the open graph is that over time, as you start to use more and more of these apps and they get consolidated as time moves on, you can look at maybe a map view of everywhere that you checked in on food spotting so that you see more. It's like it gets condensed as time goes on so that you have more of a breadcrumb trail of your activity, which is the whole idea behind the Facebook timeline. It's going to upset some people because it's too much information.
Well, that and it fills out your timeline. So if I'm looking at your profile, it'd be like, oh, well, Sarah not just liked something, or like some of these verbs were cracking me up. You can nom something, you can crave something, you can pin something. So
how about gag?
I don't know.
Like,
I guess that's a special partner. But like to get that full picture of the timeline, when they showed that thing off the first time, it looked, okay, if I put up my photos, if I do a lot of curating, you can have a really good picture of who I am. But with these extra things like, oh, I read this book, or I listened to that, or I watched that, you get a different picture of me because I'm just clicking these extra buttons instead of, oh, I liked this, I like this. It seems like Iyaz likes everything. That seemed like it didn't fit in the timeline kind of feel, but with these extra verbs, I'm thinking you're going to get a nice, rounder picture of somebody because, I mean, there's a reason why we have more than one verb in English.
Well, I think the idea is to give people a lot of choices so that you might pick your 2 or 3 apps that work really well with the Open Graph. Like, you might really like running. So you've got, your Nike Air app type of a thing. I'm just pulling these out of thin air and cooking. And so you're probably not going to use everything that's available. Tom, you might use 3 different ones. So it's supposed to be sort of a mirror image of our personalities.
All right, let's take a quick break and thank our sponsor, GoToMeeting. Love the folks at Citrix, and being able to attach a face to a name is important in meetings. Now, Citrix provides GoToMeeting, the ability to do meetings across the country without having to travel, without having to get everybody together in the same place. Now, HD Faces means you can look people in the eye and you can still be halfway across the world from each other. We recommend GoToMeeting here at TWiT with HD Faces because it lets you meet face-to-face. Here's how it works. With GoToMeeting by Citrix, all you need is a webcam and the ability to click. Do you have a finger? You don't even need a finger, actually. There's other ways to click. You can do it with your eyes now. There's all kinds of crazy technology. You just click, set up your webcam, create a group, collaborate in that group, and you've got HD video. You can see your attendants eye to eye while collaborating on documents in real time. You'll feel instantly connected, even if you're halfway around the globe from each other. Plus, GoToMeeting is so easy to set up and simple to use. Anybody can do it. You don't have to walk people through it. You just send them the link. They're off to the races. We use it for meetings here at TWiT. It's amazing. The HD video is so clear. So check it out. Start your own face-to-face online meeting for free. That's right. You don't have to take our word for it. Try it out. Our audience gets to try it free for 30 days. Just go to GoToMeeting.com, GoToMeeting.com, and click the Try It Free button and use the promo code TNT. If you do that, you get to try it free for 30 days. There's no excuse. Go try it out. Next time you got a meeting, you want to see the people. Well, maybe you don't want to see the people, but it's probably a good idea that you have to see the people so you can show them stuff, look them in the eye, see their facial expressions. Meetings are a whole different ballgame when you actually can look at the other person and see their expressions and read their nonverbals. Check it out. GoToMeeting.com. Offer code TNT. We thank them for their support of Tech News Today. All right, a few more discussion stories to get out of the way. Just to follow up on SOPA and PIPA, everybody's asking, okay, did the protest yesterday have an effect? And the Internet's patting itself on the back saying, yes, we killed the bills. Well, the bills aren't killed yet. They're, in fact, in no different state than they were 2 days ago before the protest. However, John Boehner has said he doesn't think it's going to come back up for a vote, even though Lamar Smith would like to bring it to a vote in the House. Senator Patrick Leahy has said he's considering removing the search engine component of PIPA. So he's already talked about, he's already done a manager's amendment to remove the DNS provisions. Now he's talking about removing the search engine provisions. That would leave just the money provisions, which at that point you can look at the Open Act from Senator Ron Wyden and talk about reconciling them. There's also, I believe, 18 senators that changed their mind on PIPA yesterday, or PIPA, or PIPA, however you say it. Protect IP. That's why I say Protect IP. It's easier that way. And big names. We talked about some of them yesterday, like Orrin
Most of them
Hatch.
Republicans, too.
Mark Begich is a Democrat, though. Kelly Ayotte, Mike Johans, Pat Toomey, Tom Coburn, Olympia Snowe, David Vitter, a bunch of them. Ars Technica has a good list of all of that. So, yes, there were a lot of people signed petitions. A lot of people called their congressperson. Phones melted down yesterday. Seem to have changed. I mean, look at it this way. Open Congress says they've got 35 supporters that they have tracked down in the Senate of Protect IP, 18 opponents, and 12 more senators leaning toward opposition. That's far from consensus. That's far from opposition. These bills are not dead yet. They could still be passed.
They're not dead, but the amount of Congress people who have basically changed their mind, done a complete 180, given that the blackout day was yesterday, is pretty. I don't think that anybody could say that yesterday was not effective. As annoying as it might have been, for many people, that the people were heard.
Yeah, even though these bills seem like they're kind of, I guess, they're almost shelved or they might be dead, these things keep coming back. I mean, PIPA was there before SOPA, and there was COICA before that, and there's always something before this. So just because these guys are saying right now, we don't agree with it now, even though we agree with it then, expect to hear it again, because there's going to be another push for another bill. That it's just a constant evolution. Hopefully, there will be some lessons learned by this, and these kinds of provisions won't even be there in the first place. but that doesn't really stop things. I remember when we first did Protect IP, we were like, this is pretty bad. Then we saw SOPA, and we're like, this is way worse. It almost made PIPA look normal. Then Open looks like it's completely fine, but I'm sure if we examined it enough, we might find some issues with that as well.
I wonder how many conspiracy theories, actually, I don't even wonder, I've seen them already, are being hatched about the FBI, an arm of the executive branch of the United States government, the White House, which has come down sort of against SOPA and Protect IP Act, taking today as the day that they send the FBI over to New Zealand to arrest Megaupload's founders.
Well, I think the indictment was from the 5th of January.
They could have gone yesterday.
But it could take time to travel.
It could be this is just
people. It could be a coincidence.
It's a 16-hour flight. I've made it.
I don't know. You might be jet lagged. If you're going to go raid people's houses, you might want some rest. I don't know.
It seems like it could have been yesterday. It could have been tomorrow.
It might have been a bigger statement yesterday too.
Yeah.
If they'd done that there, it would have been a really like, all right, we don't care.
And what kind of statement is it? Is it saying, hey, we're the White House, we're on your side, you know, don't turn against us even though we seem to be against SOPA and PIPA to the MPAA? Or is it a statement of, see, you don't need these acts, we can project our power across
We can
the world.
physically make it stop.
As you pointed out, the servers are in Virginia. So
I do think as long as we keep hearing senators say things like, this bill's not ready for prime time yet, it is not over.
Yep,
Definitely.
absolutely. Kodak filing for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. We talked about this possibly going to happen. It's official. They have filed. Chairman Antonio Perez reiterated in a press release that the company's remaining value is in intellectual property, particularly printing technologies and image capture patents. So they're going the route of being a patent holding company. They owe $12 million to Nokia for IP royalties, so they're also a patent owing company. Kodak had $5.1 billion in assets on September 30th, 2011, and $6.75 billion in debt. Their first act after filing, suing Samsung for patent infringement.
Well, they have
That's how you make the money.
They got to find money. They have to satisfy their debts, and they have some assets that can generate some revenue, so they have to do this. I mean, it's backs against the wall here. And before anybody starts calling Kodak a patent troll, which I know somebody will in like 2 years from now.
I did it in prep. I wasn't going to do it here.
Before somebody does it again, I guess, these guys were in the business of cameras and imaging and all kinds of technologies that were completely relevant to the patents they had. So,
they have made digital cameras.
Yes, it's Kodak. I mean, it's not like,
it's not like Kodak from 15 years or 20 years ago either. They've been building. They just couldn't break into the business enough to compete with Olympus and Fujifilm.
Once those patents are sold off, I'm just expecting Kodak to go the way of Polaroid, where it's just a label from some company that you never knew about.
Also, Apple filed a security lien. Can you explain what this means?
All I can tell is they wanted some clarification on some patents they already have with them. So I think Apple doesn't want to get sued by Kodak in this last litigation death sprawl thing that they're doing.
Finally, RBC Capital analyst Ross Sandler surveyed 216 Kindle Fire owners, and his analysis finds that Amazon's making money off these things. Even though they sell them at a loss, the cumulative lifetime operating income per unit is $136, with a cumulative operating margin of over 20%. Now, if that doesn't sound like a lot to you, they're selling 5 million of these things. So $136 a pop for 5 million, that makes you a nice chunk of change.
Well, that was the whole point when we heard, are they going to lose $10 each Kindle Fire? Woo, gosh, they're really betting on a good future. I mean, I think that Amazon knew it would be a hit enough to see numbers like this, so it doesn't matter. I mean, you can take a loss on hardware if you make it back in publishing.
I mean, the whole concept behind the Fire was like a content selling device. It's not like, the Fire will make us all the money on the hardware. It's like not even close. It became very easy to load that thing up with content from Amazon. Very easy to buy things from Amazon. Of course, this is what their plan was, and it's working really well. So, I mean, it also means that there's room for, if you're big enough, you can just put out a product that's low cost or sell it at cost or even at a loss and still have a revenue thing. I mean, this is how video game systems or consoles were operated for a very long time as well.
All right, let's move on to the news fuse. Twitter just bought Sumify, the news aggregating service that created summaries of news from your social networks, and Sumify will no longer register new accounts and is removing all its features before shutting down. Sumify team will join Twitter in San Francisco, but there is no mention when and if Sumify-like features would show up in Twitter.
AT&T is set to introduce some new data plans with higher prices, but along with higher prices are higher data caps. The lowest tier plan is now $20. It'll give you 300 megabytes. Mid-range users can get 3 gigabytes for $30 per month, and then the high-end plan is $50 for 5 gigabytes. The older plans were $5 cheaper, but then again, they offered less data. If you have an older plan, you can stick with that. The new rates are just for new customers and those who opt in.
It's actually cheaper per gigabyte to go with the new plans nowadays. Nike introduced its Fuel Band, a wristband device that tracks fitness metrics. The system uses what Nike calls Nike Fuel, which tracks oxygen consumption and motion. The band will work with the iPhone when it's launched, and an Android app is coming out soon. It'll cost $150 and be available in the U.S. on February 22nd, May 1st for the U.K., and the rest of the world will get the band in fall.
Israeli hackers IDF team took down Arab banking sites, Arab Bank, and the Central Bank of the United Arab Emirates. Another Israeli group calling itself Nuclear posted credit card information of 4,800 Saudi Arabian accounts on Wednesday. The IDF attack is thought to be a retaliation for the hacks to El Al Airlines and the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange. So the cyber war is really heating up there.
Sony Ericsson reported a €247 million pre-tax loss for its fourth quarter. The company says the loss is due to intense competition, price erosion, and restructuring changes. Ericsson is still scheduled to receive €1.5 billion once Sony buys out its stake in the joint venture. That deal is set to close by February.
McAfee disclosed 2 vulnerabilities to one of its products. Is it SaaS? S-A-A-S?
Yeah.
For total protection.
Software as a service.
Thank you.
SaaS.
Okay. The vulnerabilities would allow somebody to execute code via an ActiveX control. Now, McAfee says that it's seen no evidence of data loss due to these vulnerabilities, and the patch is rolling out now and will be applied automatically.
Want to know how much you have to pay to make a Windows phone? Well, Santiago Sierra of ZTE let it slip. He's the exec. He was talking to Trusted Reviews, and he said, oh, yeah, we pay between $23 and $30 for a Windows Phone license. I don't think he was supposed to say that. Reportedly, Samsung and HTC pay a much lower price at around $10 to $15. The Verge contacted ZTE for a reaction to that price difference, but they surprisingly haven't received a response.
Want to buy some insurance from Intel?
Sure.
Yeah, they're actually offering insurance called Performing Tuning Protection Plan. Currently applies to only 5 CPUs. If your CPU dies due to overheating, Intel will replace your processor for $20 to $35, depending on your processor model. The policy lasts for 3 years, applies to retail box CPUs, and you can buy the policy for a year after you buy the processor.
Dave Cutler, lead developer of Windows NT, has moved on to the Xbox team at Microsoft. According to Mary Jo Foley sources, Cutler was done working on Windows Azure and wanted a new challenge. A Microsoft spokesperson said that Cutler will help make the Xbox more than a game console and into, quote, a complete home entertainment device.
Because Xbox runs on NT.
That's right. So he's going to have some fun with this.
Well, not exactly NT.
Well,
but
I think it's NIT.
it's got its
Tom.
roots.
Isn't it?
Windows NT.
Windows NIT.
Let's move on to check the numbers. Everybody's got an earnings report today, so we're going to flip through these really quickly. Microsoft met expectations, even though Windows took a dive. Windows taking a dive because hardware sales kind of took a dive because of the flooding in Thailand, lack of hard drives, so they suffered there. But sales in servers and games offset revenue of $20.89 billion for its fiscal second quarter that ended December 31st. That's a 5% jump from a year ago. So good job, Xbox and all of those Windows servers out there. eBay reported a jump in profits. Its Q4 2011 financials did quite well. Net income was $1.98 billion, up from $559 million last year. It's a huge jump. Some of that money came from selling its remaining stake in Skype, so that's why it's so huge. However, not counting the Microsoft money, eBay still made $789 billion, so still a jump. Earnings per share for IBM were $4.62 per share, up 11% for the quarter. Net income for the quarter was $5.5 billion, up 4% for the quarter, with revenue coming in at $29.5 billion, up 2%. Sales missed, but profit beat expectations. So they weathered the hard drive storm fairly well. Of course, they're more service-oriented than hardware-oriented these days. Google, who you wouldn't think would be hit hard by any Thai flooding at all, actually came up short in their Q4 earnings. Earnings per shares of $9.50, net revenue of $8.13 billion. They did surpass $10 billion in revenue for the first time in the company's history. And hey, 90 million people on Google Plus now. That's almost an eighth of what Facebook has.
That's pretty fast growth.
Yeah,
it is. 90 million.
In less than a year. Like, what, half a year? Just over a half a year?
I think Google Plus launched last March.
March in beta, but then like public and later in the
so I've been
summer.
on
So
since March.
kind of depends on how you track it. Exactly.
Well, considering that it was in closed beta, and a lot of
For
people who
most of
wanted
the year.
access didn't get it for a while, that is good growth.
Finally, Intel beat the street. They weathered the flooding, the Thai flooding well. Sales for the fourth quarter came in at $13.9 billion, and per-share earnings were 64 cents for a net of $3.4 billion. For the full year, Intel finished with sales of $54 billion and a net of $12.9 billion, and earnings per share of $2.39. All of those were records for Intel, and that's a look at the numbers. Let's check the calendar.
That's not the
Or say hi to
calendar.
go to meeting again.
Hey,
Just go.
why not? I have some good news.
Play it at any point. Doesn't matter.
I have some good news. Any point. Bling. RDO is officially launching in Australia and New Zealand for all those people down under. Do New Zealand people say down under also? Is that just Australia?
Yeah,
Don't want to
no,
offend
I believe
anybody?
so. Yeah,
Okay.
right.
It's actually been live for about a week, although it was just announced today. The web-only plan, at least in Australia, costs $8.90, while mobile access is about $12.90 Australian per month. You do the math there, conversion. So good news for anybody who wants radio international. EU is deciding on the Google Motorola mobility deal on February 13th.
Keep an eye on
Gonna
that.
happen?
Yeah, it's
Gonna
gonna
go?
happen.
Yeah,
I think so
it will.
too.
I don't see any
There's-
problem.
yeah,
Well,
it's-
I'll be difficult. No, it'll never happen.
You know,
How's that?
All right.
Of all the things people have to
Token
deal
opposition.
with, it doesn't seem like the Google Motorola deal is getting a whole lot of attention. So, better for worse. And finally, Virgin Mobile will begin throttling data speeds
Yay.
on
What?
March 23rd. It's not good. It's bad. Each month that a user exceeds 2.5 gigabytes of data usage, they will have their downloads capped at 256 kilobytes per second for the remainder of the billing cycle. And after exceeding 2.5 gigabytes of data usage, speeds will drop down. But you'll be able to start, I just said that, but you'll be able to start a new month of service immediately to get your speeds back with a new data cap. And you get a text notification if you hit that 2.5 gigabyte.
Oh my gosh,
It's-
Virgin, just don't do it.
it's just-
too
They've
complicated.
been putting this off
All
so
you're going
long.
to do is upset people.
Hopefully, they'll just keep not doing this.
All right, let's move on to what's incoming.
Incoming message.
We will start off with an email about SOPA and PIPA. Sarah Lane.
Hello to David Garcia, who wrote, I'm not sure if you mentioned this site before, but govtrack.us is a great resource to track legislation being considered by the U.S. Congress. The site includes full text of the bills, summaries and status, additional resources, committees assigned, related legislation. The related legislation section is particularly interesting, knowing that SOPA and PIPA are simply the latest and more well-known bills related to online privacy, copyright, intellectual property. The tech community must stay engaged in this political legislative process if they want to ensure that bills similar to these bills are not brought to Congress in the future. Engagement in the process can't be limited to online protest if it must include voting, contacting members of Congress, and talking with the MPAA, RIAA, and others who, at least in their minds, have legitimate concerns regarding piracy and intellectual property rights.
I like that. Thanks for the tip-off, David.
Yeah.
Govtrack.us, great place to keep track of any bill that you're interested in, especially these.
It's nice to see where they are in this. You're like, was it approved by the president? Oh, no. And then you can read about all the history. So that's good. Last email from John Bullock, AT&T, in the discussions about the actual damage that piracy causes. One thing that I rarely hear discussed is the actual value of the content. To me, it feels like music labels, book publishers, movie studios, etc., are almost using piracy to ignore the market. When music sales start to drop, it never seems to be considered that the music might not be as valuable as it was, because it's not as good, because there's more things fighting for free time and so on, but rather it is the fault of piracy. No, our content is just as valuable as it was 10 years ago. It's piracy that is causing our drop in sales.
No, John, you're absolutely right. That's why I keep saying we need to have the harm shown. I took some heat from some people who are like, oh, so you're saying there's no harm from piracy. I want to be clear. I'm not saying that. I'm saying we don't know what the level of harm is. So why should we go to this overreaching legislation? Why are we treating it as if it is an urgent problem when we haven't adequately figured out how much harm is piracy causing? I'm sure it's causing harm, right? Just like, you know,
But how do you measure that?
I'm sure that if I speed home at 70 miles an hour, I won't get caught with a ticket. But I don't know that till I go do it. We don't know what the harm of piracy is until we actually can measure it somehow, because it could be because music and movies just aren't as good and people aren't as interested in them. We don't know that that's true, but we don't know that it isn't.
I mean,
There's
that's
so
why-
many factors. This is a complex problem. We can't just jump to conclusions.
That's why, like, all those laws that have to deal with cell phones and radiation warnings and things constantly need scientific testing first and some kind of basis before they ever get passed. It's always good to have some kind of supporting evidence to say, yeah, maybe we should do something, instead of just saying, oh, there's a problem, we're just going to take that as the premise without examining the premise first. So, I mean, if we're willing to do it for so many other laws, like health laws, this is something that should be the same.
Yeah. Especially because it's less important to the welfare of the country than health. And that's not to say it's not important. Don't get me wrong, but I think our health is more important than our entertainment industry. Do you disagree?
I'm not going to disagree.
Health is kind of number one. As
You have to be alive
continue
to
to
watch
spew
entertainment.
germs in my general
To
direction.
illustrate that point,
The things I do. I come to work every day.
All right.
Sick people.
That's it for this episode of Tech News Today. Our Reddit is back up. The protest is over. TechNewsToday.reddit.com.
I missed you.
Submit some stories, vote on some stories there. You can find us on the web at twit.tv/TNT. Email us TNT@twit.tv and give us a call, 260-TNT-SHOW. Darren Kitchen joins us tomorrow. Maybe I'll see you then.
maybe. We will see.
Need a stretcher.
It's the closest you get to see Tom dancing.
Yay! Hey. Hi.
Oh, you kept Kathleen on the whole time?
You're still there.
I'm still here.
Oh.